had just moved into my dream home in Sector 67. Bright walls, spacious rooms, a balcony overlooking a quiet park. It was perfect. Exactly what I had always wanted. But there was one problem. The entire lane was empty. Most houses around me were dark, silent. At night, the neighborhood felt frozen, as if time itself had stopped. The very first day I moved in, carrying boxes inside, I felt it, like something cold crawled under my skin. A hand brushing from the inside. I told myself it was just stress, but deep down, it felt like a warning. A week later, the first incident happened. At 2 a.m., my brother and I woke to the sound of heavy furniture being dragged directly above us. We ignored it at first, maybe construction, but the sound came again, night after night, and then it hit us. No one lived above us. In fact, the entire building next door was empty. So where were those sounds coming from? My brother was the first to see something. I swear someone just walked past me, he said. But when he turned, no one was there. Just that quick flash in his peripheral vision. From that night on, shadows followed us everywhere. In the hallways, the kitchen, even on the balcony, like invisible figures moving just out of sight, reminding us we weren't alone. Then came the night I'll never forget. I woke up, frozen. A hand pressed against my legs. My chest tightened. Sleep paralysis. And that's when I saw it. Someone was sitting on my bed. Not beside it. On it, a dark figure, face blurred, leaning close. Watching me breathe, I tried to scream, but nothing came out. And then, it was gone. But the spot where it sat still felt heavy, as though someone had just stood up. Soon, my brother had his own experience. One night, he woke up frozen, staring at the mirror by his bed, and in the reflection, a man dressed in black stood over him. Hollow eyes, staring, unmoving. My brother tried to call for me, but no sound escaped. And just like that, the figure vanished. That was the night we knew. This wasn't imagination. Something was living with us. From then on, it became routine. Eyes watching from the balcony. Footsteps in empty hallways. Bottles rattling on their own, even. Faucets dripping after being tightly closed. The house was alive, and it was watching us. Then came the call. A friend who stayed over one night phoned me in. "Panic! Was that an earthquake?" she asked. All the bottles in my room just started shaking. That night, around midnight, she heard it, a whisper, right next to her ear. "It's too late. Go to sleep. I'll take care of the house." She left the next morning. She never came back. After that, I had the house cleansed, rituals, prayers, and slowly, the heaviness lifted. For the first time in months, the house felt light again, peaceful. It's been over a year now, and everything is normal. But sometimes, when the wind rattles my windows at night, I still hear that same whisper in the back of my mind. "It's too late. I'll take care of the house." I bought my first house in 2003 and was over the moon. Shortly after moving in, two of my neighbors began joking with me about the ghost in my house. Well, I thought they were joking, so I just played along, pretending I had seen one, and it was no big deal. Well, as time went on that summer, I met more and more of my neighbors, and they all brought up the same topic. Finally, an elderly woman on the block who was quite kind and friendly told me story after I'd asked her. I knew she wasn't going to screw with my head, which is why I asked in the first place. Turned out the previous owner purchased the home and never lived there because she said it was haunted. Sounds in the night of footsteps and sobbing, and glimpses of a man sitting in the kitchen covered in blood. One of my neighbors helped with the renovations of the house and said that he was putting up drywall when he felt something lift up his dreadlocks. Though I've had paranormal experiences before, it had been years, and by then I just chalked it up to night terrors. One day I went to a small neighborhood video store to rent a movie. I had to fill out a form with my demographic data and then my credit card info. The owner of the store looked at the form and said, "Oh my God, you live in that house." I asked her what she meant, and she explained that her former employee had committed suicide in my house. She came to the house as soon as she'd heard, but the house had been taped off by police as a potential crime scene. She told me that he had just moved into the house with his partner and called his mom because he wanted to invite her over to meet his partner and come out to her. This was in the early 90s when being gay was a big deal. His mother already knew he was gay because he bought a house with a man and disowned him right over the phone. That same week, he received a letter from an HIV testing center stating he had tested positive for HIV. This is when HIV was a death sentence. He then sat at the kitchen table, ate a bowl of cereal, and shot himself in the head with a revolver. Since then, she has had multiple paranormal experiences in the store, with videos flying off shelves and even levitating off shelves. The most I have experienced is sounds at night, sounds of Cheerios being poured into a bowl. I don't eat cereal. And sounds of sobbing in the kitchen. I often awaken to both. I remember my grandmother saying, "When the dead come to you, they want something. Perform an act of charity in their name and pray for them." So I did. I sat down at the kitchen table one night and lit a candle and told him that each night I would recite a novena prayer for him before a lit candle. On the 9th night of the first novena to Saint Anthony, patron saint of lost souls, I heard uncontrollable sobbing. I felt a strong presence of grief and despair, and the sound of hyperventilating breathing, as though someone could not catch their breath. I sat in the presence of this knowing it was not malignant, but rather a connection of intimacy and compassion of which he was in need. For 45 days I said a novena prayer before a lit candle for his soul, and had a mass said in his name. A few times I had awakened to feel his presence standing over my bed, but knew it was not a malignant presence. This still happens from time to time, but less and less frequently. In 2014, my family moved into a house straight out of a horror film. An old, creaking home on the edge of town opposite a cemetery, and backed right onto an abandoned hospital. We thought we were starting a new life together as a blended family. Instead, we stepped into 4 years of fear, mystery, and events I still can't explain. A 200 to 300-year-old house in the UK countryside. Stone walls, heavy wooden doors, no windows in the upstairs hallway. Out front, a cemetery. Out back, an abandoned NHS hospital with empty, broken buildings and overgrown grounds. It sounds like the set for a ghost movie, but it was our home. I still drive past it every day, and every time, my stomach tightens. I can't stop thinking about what happened there. The first afternoon we arrived, the air was damp and cold even though it was summer. The garden at the back of our house was separated from the abandoned hospital, property by nothing but a sagging wooden fence. My 2 stepbrothers and I dragged some logs and branches together to make a makeshift football goal. We propped them up against a tree at the bottom of the hospital garden and kicked a ball around for a while. After less than an hour, we got bored and wandered off to explore the ruined hospital grounds. Cracked windows, birds nesting in old doorways, the smell of mold and rot. When we came back, our goal was gone. Well, not gone exactly, but every stick and log had been gathered into perfectly neat piles, like someone had measured and stacked them with precision. We stood frozen. There was no way the logs had just fallen like that. We told our parents. They told us they'd done it to scare us. Years later, they admitted it wasn't them. They'd been just as freaked out. A few months later, my mom and stepdad were gifted a plant when they got married. One day they got angry with us, saying, "Stop watering that plant. You'll kill it." We had no idea what they were talking about. We didn't even know what plant they meant. But every few days they'd move it, hide it, and somehow it would still end up overwatered. The plant began to wither and die. Even now, my brothers swear they never touched it, and I believe them. It felt like something, or someone, in the house was doing it. Then came the night that even my mom couldn't ignore. She doesn't believe in ghosts, never has. But she was standing in my bedroom doorway one evening, chatting to me. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw my younger brother walk from his room at the end of the hall into the bathroom. Totally normal, except when she went downstairs a moment later. Both of my brothers were sitting on the sofa with my stepdad watching football. There was no one else upstairs. That was the first time I saw her face go pale. It wasn't just us. Our 2 dogs, normally gentle and well-behaved, began acting strangely in one specific spot in the garden. Every night, like clockwork, they would go to that spot, snarl, then whine and cry, lowering themselves to the ground as though someone invisible was shouting at them. The hair on their backs would rise. Their tails would tuck. They'd pull at their leads to get back inside. It was always the same spot. Always at night. I had a wooden sign on the back of my bedroom door. The upstairs hall had no windows, no drafts. Yet every night, after midnight, the sign would begin to bang softly against the door. Not like it was loose, but like someone was knocking. Tap, tap, tap. At first, I thought it was my brothers playing a prank. But it happened even when they were away. It happened even when I was wide awake watching it. Those were just a few of the things. There were dozens more. Cold spots. Doors opening when no one was near them. Objects moving. The feeling of being watched. We stayed for 4 years. Then we moved, just a 2-minute walk away. but I still drive past that house every day. And every time I remember, I've even contacted local archives to try and learn more about the property. Who built it? What happened there? Nothing I've found so far explains it. Maybe it was the proximity to the cemetery. Maybe it was the abandoned hospital. Maybe it was the house itself. All I know is that whatever was there, it wanted to be noticed. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who gets paranoid from silence. But during the 2021 lockdown, when I stayed alone at my uncle's house for 2 weeks, silence started to feel like a living thing. He lives on the outskirts of town, in a house surrounded by forest. It's the kind of quiet where even during the day you only hear birds or leaves shifting. At night, it's a black hole. I was 23 then, doing freelance work, treating it like a retreat. The house was beautiful, but the silence had edges, like the walls were listening, like something was always waiting behind it. One night, around 1:30 a.m., I just finished watching a thriller on Netflix. I was in bed, scrolling my phone, the only light coming from a small lamp on the nightstand. That's when I heard it, a faint creak from the living room. Old house, I told myself. Wood contracts, houses sigh. But then it came again, louder, rhythmic, like weight shifting across the floorboards. I froze. My first thought was wind, or a branch scratching the siding, but the sound was inside. I muted the TV and held my breath. The creak stopped. I got up anyway, heart hammering, and cracked the bedroom door open just enough to peek out. The hallway was black, the kind of dark where shadows look thicker. Then I saw it, a flicker, like someone had just passed in front of the porch light. A shadow that shouldn't have been there. I stood perfectly still, straining to hear footsteps, voices, anything, nothing. I hadn't heard the door open, no glass breaking, just the silence. And it was so loud it pressed against my ears like static. My mind started racing. What if someone's inside? What if I'm just imagining it? I backed into the room, shut the door quietly, and grabbed the only thing near me, a tiny pocket knife from my keychain. Completely useless, but it made me feel 1% safer. I sat on the bed like that for what felt like an hour, listening. Every creak of the house became a footstep. Every gust of wind became breathing. I didn't sleep at all. At sunrise, I walked through the house, checking every door and window. Everything looked untouched until I reached the front door. It was unlocked. I was 100% sure I'd locked it. I remember doing it like a ritual before bed, double-checking, triple-checking. There was no sign of a break-in, nothing missing. But the door was unlocked. That shook me more than the creaking, because it meant one of two things. Either I was losing my mind, or someone had been there and just left. I've never heard silence the same way since. Now, I'm obsessed with stories like this. Not the movie jump scares, the subtle things. Things moving, doors unlocking, breathing where no one should be. The small details you think you're imagining until you live them. It was one of those nights that felt heavier than usual. My parents had gone out of town for a work function, and I had insisted I was fine staying home alone. I was a teenager, old enough to handle myself, or at least that's what I kept telling them. We lived in a pretty quiet neighborhood where nothing exciting ever seemed to happen, so really, what was there to worry about? By the time the clock hit 9 p.m., I was curled up on the couch, the TV flickering in front of me, a bowl of chips beside me, and my phone buzzing occasionally with notifications from friends. Everything felt normal, calm, even boring. That was until I heard the first knock. It was sharp, loud, too deliberate to be a neighbor. At first I froze. You know that weird instinct where your body just refuses to move because your brain can't process what's happening? That's exactly what happened. Then came another knock. Slow this time. 3 solid bangs against the front door. I stood up, heart hammering, and peeked through the side window. Nothing. The porch light was on, but the steps were empty. My hand was trembling as I unlocked the door, only cracking it open a few inches. Hello? My voice barely carried. No answer. The night air was cold, but the silence was colder. I shut the door quickly, locked it, and sat back on the couch, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. Maybe it was kids messing around. Maybe someone had the wrong house. But deep down, my gut told me something was wrong. Not 10 minutes later, the knocking came again. This time it was faster, almost frantic. I didn't open the door. Instead, I called out, trying to sound braver than I felt. Who's there? A pause. Then a man's voice, rough and oddly cheerful. Can you help me? My car broke down. down. Just need to use your phone. Every instinct in me screamed no. Something about the way he said it. It didn't sound like someone in trouble. It sounded like someone trying to play a role. I shouted back, "I'm calling the police!" And I really did grab my phone, dialing 911 with shaky hands. The operator's calm voice steadied me as I explained, whispering so the man outside wouldn't hear too much. She told me officers were on their way and to stay inside. Doors locked. I could barely breathe, every second stretching into forever as the knocking turned into pounding. Then, silence. I thought he'd left. I was starting to calm down, pacing back and forth, until I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The back door. I had forgotten to lock the back door earlier in the evening, and that's when I heard it. The faint sound of the back door creaking open. I swear my blood went ice cold. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a lamp, and ran upstairs, slamming my bedroom door shut and pushing my dresser against it. I whispered to the 911 operator, telling her he was inside now. My voice was shaking so badly she had to keep telling me to breathe. Then I heard the footsteps, slow, heavy, each one pressing into the old wooden floorboards of the hallway. He wasn't even trying to be quiet. He wanted me to hear him, and then he laughed. It wasn't loud, more like a low chuckle, but it echoed in the silence of my house. I pressed myself against the wall, holding my breath, gripping the lamp so tight my knuckles ached. Minutes dragged on. I heard him move closer, the floor groaning under his weight. He stopped right outside my bedroom door. I saw the shadow of his feet through the small gap beneath it. He just stood there. The silence was unbearable. Then, in a voice that made my skin crawl, he whispered, "I know you're in there." I didn't respond. Couldn't respond. I just pressed the phone tighter against my ear, hearing the operator telling me, "Stay calm. Officers are right around the corner." The man rattled the doorknob. Once, twice, slowly at first, then violently shaking it. The dresser shifted slightly with the force. I was nearly in tears, trying not to make a sound, praying he wouldn't break through. Finally, I heard it. Sirens. Faint at first, then louder, closer. The man must have heard them too, because suddenly his shadow disappeared. His footsteps retreated, quick now, almost running. Moments later, red and blue lights flashed across my window. The pounding on the front door this time wasn't him, it was the police. I ran down, opened the door, and nearly collapsed into their arms. They searched the whole house, every room, every corner. The back door had been forced open, but the man was gone. To this day, they never caught him. They don't know who he was, what he wanted, or how long he'd been planning it. But I still hear his voice sometimes, that whisper through the door, "I know you're in there," and I'll never forget the laugh.